time the tree blossoms, the same thing happens to the tree that happens to us when we feel joy. During the moment, that moment of joy occurs. It's happening for a lot of you right here, right now. It's going on. And I thank you. When it happens to the tree, it's just like when it happens for you. You can see it. People see it. People can see that joy. They can feel it. You may not look in the mirror and see anything any different. But believe me, it's seen. And all of a sudden, during those moments, you're seen, felt. People a long way away as far as distance goes, but distance you see is here. Awareness is everywhere present, nowhere absent. So you'll get letters, you'll see people looking at you, and people will smile out of a clear sky, and strangers will walk up and say something, but there'll be many confirmations. Your husband might say, how beautiful you are. Right now, our friend. All right. So think of that sense of joy as the tree blooming. And the tree must surely think the same thing, because the tree has been there maybe a lot of years without bloom. And the tree says, oh, how I would like to have this grand experience of life. Oh, how I would like to have and to break out and be a new, joyful sense of identity or whatever. And okay, then when it blooms, it looks round about at all its branches and it says, oh, beauty in mine, loveliness in mine. And confirmation comes quickly because the hummingbirds that have been passing it by quit. They stop. They stop for a drink of water. And the bees stop for a gathering of substance. And the butterflies stop. And they didn't before, but they do this time. And even maybe people stop and take pictures and see how beautiful. The tree might be prone to be very puffed up and say, boy, this is great, hot dang, I finally arrived. That's what I did. That's what I did. I was big cheese. Little Bill was the biggest cheese of them all. And I thought I had really got there and you poor old uncles out there, you don't know nothing about nothing. And you ain't bloomed yet at all, but I bloomed. Well, listen. It isn't long after the blooming that the winds blow. It isn't long after the blooming that the dark clouds gather and the storms come. Because the bloom isn't supposed to stay. See? It isn't even supposed to. Who says, and where have you ever seen it said, that one's mountaintop experience is a perpetual thing within the arena of tangibility? From whence has arisen such a statement? You know, I began to look for it. When this dawned on me, I said, who is it? Where did I get the idea it's supposed to last forever? Who says so? Who? Is this something I've gotten? Yeah, I began to hear all the theoreticians and all the people who were theorizing and speculating and quoting this one and that one, saying that it was supposed to be, but they weren't living on a mountaintop perpetually. So, you might do a little research, you'll see it's never been said. But forget that at the moment. The storm does come. There is all of a sudden a fall away. But in the East, where I've studied and lived and enjoyed Eastern ideas too, that is, this is what. There is a saying about running back to the bamboo grove. Now, what is meant by that is the master is talking to his students, and it's usually supposed to be in a bamboo grove where the grand blooming experience takes place. And then, lo and behold, when the storm comes, and the one is back in the slough of despond again, and there is the oppressiveness of anguish, he feels that he's back where he started, and so they run back to the bamboo grove again to be re-inspired. Here in our society, what do? we run back to the teacher again, or we get the lesson again, or we begin berating ourselves and saying, well, now I just must not have gotten it straight. I'm guilty. Almost got it straight, but somewhere I didn't do it. I didn't listen attentively enough. I haven't studied hard enough. I'm not sincere enough. I got very close, but I haven't quite gotten it. And so we go running back to the book again, or to another book. And we hear of the promise of another ology there, or another one here, or another teacher, or another somebody, and we go there. And we keep doing that over and over and over. I did. Now back to the flower, the tree that's blooming. Everyone sees its joy. One can look and he knows. You know when you feel joy. When you feel that you've heard something that's meaningful, something that you can sink your teeth into and do. That's it. It's like a little boy dragging a stick up the fence. It's like a little girl on a swing. It's like watching the plane right in the sky. It's like circus coming to town. It's like anguish just draining out of the fingertips because somebody smiles. Because you pick up a gentle book that has a happy verse in it. Because you hear laughter somewhere. Because a friend is coming over after dinner and you're going to play Monopoly or something. It's little. But it's the penny to be acknowledged is it. And to be said, thank you for it. All right? Now, when the slough of despond comes, and surely it does, the winds blow, the storm comes, the dishes are there, the wife gets mad again, or the husband gets mad again, or something. But this time, instead of saying, I'm back where I started from. Are all of you with me now? Are you with me? This time, instead of saying, I'm back where I started from, call this illustration to mind of the tree blooming, looking around and seeing its petals scattered all over the ground. Because after the storm blows and the petals are scattered all over the ground, is the tree back where it started from? Is it? On and clicking your heels. I use that term when I'm talking to those. I have to say something, you know, but it's not that. What follows is the fruit and the period between the shattering of the blossoms and the coming of the fruit. The period of anguish in between is only so long as one believes he's back where he started from. It will end almost immediately. But there's one thing more for myself. I would say to myself, well then thank you, anguish, for making joy plain. Thank you, slough of despond, now that I know what you make. After all, the slough is the means by which we understand what joy is. And enlightenment is infinite knowing, not theoretical knowing, not guesswork, not hypothesizing, but knowing, and knowing one knows. And how else does one know and know he knows? If he doesn't, well, I've got this backward. I can't say it well, but how would you know what joy is had there never been what seemed to be an anguish to suffer through? So the anguish, like the night time, allows the star to be seen. So that is not joy, or the anguish of the dark night is the means by which the joy, the ultimate joy, is fully known, beyond theorizing. Now, listen, we've all had enough anguish. We've had enough of the shadows. We've had enough of the darkness, that is not light, within the arena of tangibility as appearances go. It seems that we've suffered enough. Well, what is suffering? The means by which joy is made plain. Now, heretofore, we used to call suffering bad. When you bring this to mind and understand that the fruit follows, you'll see that you can call the anguish by a different name. First of all, instead of cursing it and trying to get rid of it, or heal it, or cure it, or kill it, or bury it, or call a practitioner to do something with it, or something else, all of a sudden you are saying, thank you for making joy plain. And so a new attitude has been struck. And for myself, that new attitude allowed me to see the so-called negatives of the human experience in a new light. Such that now I say, when I talk to those who visit and listen, write with authority, that darkness, the means by which light is made plain, are one light. The dark night or the slough of despond or boredom or whatever else that makes joy plain are one joy. And so I call the anguish by its new name. Now that sounds silly, or it sounds like the very thing the Bible says would happen in the last day, that the day would be called night and the night called day, and so forth. But isn't that at all? Because we're not calling the day night. We're not calling joy anguish. We are saying that joy and that which makes it plain are one joy. And we're calling it by its new name. And you'll also see that all of the religions of the world have spoken of a new name. Him that overcometh I'll give a new name on a smooth stone, known only to that one. All right, I've just told you that this is the means by which I am able to walk through an arena of apparent dualism with an unwavering sense of deep peace. Now that doesn't mean that Bill here doesn't stand up for what he thinks is right. This is no floor mat attitude. This is doesn't mean that you don't hear exclamations of anger or whatever. No difference. Oh, but the predicate from which I operate is so different than it used to be. And I assure you, it's not just a mental trick or quirk. It is. I'm hearing questions that is of a sort, so may I sound a 3-note chord that I'm capable of that will help show you how practical this is and how easy it is and how you can live it from day to day. Am I keeping you too long? All right, I'll sound, and let me tell you now, I'm going to apply this principle that I just used. Right after World War II, I came back out of World War II, I was a captain of infantry, having committed the most atrocious actions. Of course, that's the role a soldier plays. But at the time, I thought the role was very real, and there was a lot of guilt. But I came back determined that I would buckle down and I would get to the truth of everything, and there would be no more of that sort of thing for me. And so I was a deep student of metaphysics and whatnot, but I had a lot of little pet peeves. Now, one of my pet peeves, one of my don't likes, was a floppy hat that ladies used to wear. I think at this point I was fighting and struggling with, now let me get rid of ego. I've got to get rid of ego. And then I would see a lady wearing a big old floppy hat that was just like saying, everybody look at me, here I walk down the street as that hat flew, and I thought, no, not an ego thing. My goodness, isn't that the picture? Well, anyway, it was a pet peeve and I didn't like it. And I remember that I used to wax eloquent every time. You remember those big old hats? A lot of you are too young for that. And well, I pulled up to a traffic light one day and walks a lady in a flowing gown, whom later I became much acquainted with. She was lovely, lovely lady, Southern aristocrat from a little small Southern town. She always wore purple, and here she was wearing this purple dress, but with a big purple hat that flopped. And I'm sitting there as she went by, and I was going through all of the sounds that we all go through. Then all of a sudden it dawned on me, now wait a minute, Bill, wait a minute. Where do I see the light? Within awareness. All right. So therefore, The hat isn't making you angry, is it? The hat isn't. It's just an image out there being an image. The hat has no power and authority to make you angry. So if you're angry, it's not the lady's fault. It's your own. Here is I. And so when this dawned on me, I thought I saw it in a new light. All of a sudden it was funny. My anger or irritation or whatever it was that used to be sort of a pet peeve with me about floppy hats became a source of laughter. From that day on, even till now, I can go into hysterics watching a lady wearing a floppy hat. I bought Rachel one when we were down in Mexico just so I could laugh at her more. Well, okay. Now, one illustration. I've just rung a chord. Now, there's more to these stories than just the story. There's its practical aspect that I hope will be reasonable and logical and withstand any kind of intellectual argument that you want to put to it. But the stories together will be synergistic and have a greater. Next story. Where I live, where Rachel and I now have Woodsong, not very far away, is a little Alabama country town, and it has a washateria in it. But back when I was using that washateria, it was hot and not air conditioned, and it had a barely paved floor in it and a few old beat up machines, and the only people that used it were myself and a few of the country people that would come in that wanted or could afford to use a machine. I think it cost 15 cents then to do a tub, or maybe a dime. Well, anyway, I had done a tub of clothes, and then in walks a country lady, very pregnant country lady, very pregnant, and she had a little boy with her. It was a hot day, and the little boy was a hellion, and he was into mischief at every turn of the road. And she was yelling at him, "You quit this, don't you do that, stop, stop." And whatever she said, he did anyway. And she was growing progressively more impatient. Finally, the little boy accidentally, as she was taking her clothes out of the wet, getting ready to put them in the basket to go over into the dryer, in his grand exuberance and running all over the place, he hit the basket and dumped all of her fresh washed clothes out skedaddle across this muddy floor. And he stopped, terrified, knowing what was going to happen, and she yelled, "Now you come here." Now let me make a long story short. She grabbed this little boy and began to beat the tar out of him. I am in the midst at this time of saying to myself that awareness belongs to God. God is good and God is all. So there's nothing to see but good. But what do I see here? Said I. Why am I seeing this? Why? What is going on here? If God is all. What's this dead thing over here on the sidewalk? What is this stuff in the newspaper about a strangler strangling everybody out here in Los Angeles? What is all that junk I read? What is this stuff I just read in a paper not so long ago? A man got so mad at his two automobiles it wouldn't start that he went in the house and got a shotgun, went out and shot both of them. What is all that? You know, here's a woman beating this little boy to death, I thought, and I said, now wait a minute. I was just about to go out there and do the human thing, come to the boy's defense. I was just about to step between them. And I said, now wait a minute. God being all, this awareness is viewing the qualities and attributes of God. What do I see here being made plain? And like a voice, like something that speaks to one. I don't know how to put it, but you've all experienced it. I said, I am seeing love made plain. I am seeing the delineation of love. Would I know what mother love was? Would I know what patience was? Would I know what forbearance was? Had I not seen what appeared to be its opposite. So therefore I see a delineation. And I stopped, and out loud I said, thank you for making love plain. I was talking to myself, wasn't I? Am I not talking to myself now? Are you not listening to yourself now? Of course you are. Who is the myself but deity? And what are the forms and images except the qualities and attributes of God? Life made plain. All right, so I said to myself, thank you for your patience. I've never seen such a picture of love that suddenly presented itself on the scene. It stopped cold. A few minutes later, in a little cafe, as we call it, in the South, there she was, treating him to cake and ice cream, and she didn't have very much to treat anybody with, and yet she bought that little boy a treat, and what love I saw, what joy I saw. Sweet Sue. Another story, just to carry this point home. I was sitting in a dining room, and I had my sons with me, and I saw a man go up to the cash register and steal a block of chewing gum. Look around, stick it in his pocket, and walk back towards his table. Didn't leave any money. I was watching, saw it all. The world would label this action a thief. Oh, maybe only a nickel. Of course, now it's a quarter, but it was a nickel then. Well, now listen. It happened that the dining room that I'm talking about was part of this little business that my father had left me. So this man was really stealing from me. So I had all kinds of room for righteous indignation. But I was sitting there with my sons, and the first inclination was I wanted to say to my sons, look, fellas, I want you to see now, that's bad. You know, the world say that's stealing. Now, it would give me a chance to make a grand moral lesson. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. All of those temptations, but I was in the midst of this that I told you. This awareness is God awareness. This awareness is perceiving the qualities and attributes of God. Know that which is before the eyes, then that which is hidden will be revealed. Now those are the direct words of that carpenter, that grand carpenter in Galilee. Said by many others, know what is before thee, know what's hidden. All will be uncovered, and so forth. So just for a minute, I'm saying to myself, before I resisted all the temptations to make a moral lesson out of this, or to say anything to the man, or to do whatever the world would say would be the normal thing to do, the sensical, the reasonable, logical thing. I did none of them. I did the nonsensical, the unreasonable. I looked and I said, what do I see here? What do I see here really? If God is all and God is good, surely God is good. That which is being this entire universe in all of its intricate beauty and perfection in the wheeling of these galaxies and their precision and so forth. It's good. It's beautiful. It's lovely. So what do I see here? And again, it was as though I'd been hit on the head. Words almost. Honesty. Delineate. Honesty made plain. How would I know what honesty was had I never seen what appeared to be dishonest? Would I really? And so as this man walked back to his table, I said under my breath, thank you, honesty, for making yourself plain. Now I don't need any more such delineations like that to tell me what honesty is. And incidentally, that is the way a practitioner should work. And we're all practitioners. For whatever appears awry as the human experience. Because this is not to say guilty. Not guilty. Not guilty. You're not guilty of thieving. Well, let me conclude this story. 4 or 5 days later, this gentleman walked back in, and I'm sitting down there, and he walked right up to the table, and I says to myself, uh-oh. And he said, Bill, did you see what happened Sunday? And I said, I did. And he said, did you see me steal the gum? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, you know, I thought you saw me. But I went back to the table, and he said, I've lived in mortal terror being found out about this. He said, this is a compulsion with me. It's like drinking. It's like an urge. It's like something I can't stop, you know, or I thought I couldn't. And he said, but I didn't feel any condemnation. I didn't feel any sense of guilt about it. I'm going to pin it on the race. Is it not popping? I'm going to pin it down here. Okay. Well, he told me, he said, after I went home, he said, I told my wife, she's the only one that knows that I have this problem of stealing. My wife and a doctor. He says, I have a whole drawer full, 2 drawers full of all kinds of stuff that I don't need. Now, this man was a friend of mine. He was high salary gentleman who didn't need anything he took like that. He said, I've lived in mortal fear of it all. But he said, since that happened, and since I didn't feel a sense of condemnation or self-condemnation, the urge has gone. I don't have it anymore. He then went to great lengths to tell me how deep is this kind of a feeling within one, like a habit becomes, or a dependency, a chemical sort, or something can become. I've seen all of those dependencies vanish when I can say, not guilty, and know what I'm talking about. Because if I see what appears to be a chemical dependency or something other, or something like that, I can say, thank you for making independence, freedom, plain. Thank you, freedom. And know what I'm talking about. And I call it by its new name. And I say not guilty. Because what is guilty? Guilt is the means by which guiltlessness is made plain. What's called guilt is guiltlessness made plain. Now, don't tell me those two are not one. They are. The notes that make the symphony plain are one symphony. The numbers, whether they're added correctly or incorrectly, and the principle of arithmetic are one principle of arithmetic. The words, the letters of the alphabet, the letters and the alphabet are one alphabet, whether the letters are harmoniously strung or inharmoniously strung, correctly spelled or incorrectly spelled, well stated or poorly stated. So, if all of these are one, then why are not the sundry dualisms seen as the two that are a single one? And oh, you know what I found out? That I was daily walking around eliminating all the former dualisms. All of these things were two become one. When I felt myself guilty of having backslid or something, I could say, thank you for making steadfastness plain. And lo, the need for the backsliding was gone. I'll give you the third story quickly to finish the core. Back during the gasoline shortage, I pulled into a service station where there was a tremendous long line of cars. And I didn't realize it, but I got ahead of a whole bunch of people. And because there was a bike guy, the fellow driving a pickup truck, Alabama pickup truck with mud all over it and everything. He was slow getting up to the pump. And so I pulled in, and there I am, I'm putting gasoline in my tank when out steps this giant of a man, and he's mud vessels are sticking out in his neck, and he's raging mad because I'd taken his place. I was getting gasoline when it was his turn. And this wasn't so long ago. Furthermore, he had a big audience. All these cars lined up, 2 blocks of them. Everybody watching. And here is this man wearing his overhauls. We say overhauls. And his brogans, and with an audience, and with his initials or something written on all of his knuckles. And he has this big audience, and it was very apparent that this image within awareness was about to get smashed flat. And, you know, it's sensible to do what seems sensible for oneself, right? If you want to. So I looked at him, and I saw all this rage, and I was only an instant away from being pulverized, and I looked at him, and I said, thank you for making patience plain. I said it. Why not? The perceived doesn't perceive. Perceiving is going on. The
perceiving, the perceiver, and the perceived are one deific consciousness functioning. And so all right, I lived it. I said thank you to him. Well, it was like I'd hit him with a bowling ball, like I'd hit him in the head. Really, he looked like he had been poleaxed. And then he looked at me and he said, "Gosh, I guess I was making a fool out of myself. What? I go ahead, go on." By the way, I was almost filled up then anyway, but not by design, just by accident. And he said, "Go on, that's all right." I said all the things that seemed sensible to say. I said, "I didn't realize there was a blank place. I didn't know they were directing traffic. Excuse me. Here, I'll pay this amount, and you go ahead and pay the rest. And we'll subtract it, and no harm done." I did all I said what seemed sensible. We do what seems sensible. But we do it from which position? Top down, that God is all. So he didn't call me guilty. And let me tell you, I had to drive a long ways around, and when I went back around by the station, which took maybe 3 or 4 minutes, he was still standing there with a big grin on his face. And people in the car were smiling at him for his patience and gentleness to me when I suppose it could have been thought that I should have been clobbered. All right. One can look at anguish and call it by its new name. You can look at whatever you see and call it by its right name. Friends that are no longer a part of the tangible experience, you can say, "Thank you for making presence plain." You can look at what the world would label a horrendous sight along the side of the road, maybe the death of an animal or something. "Thank you, life, for your delineation." Now listen, it's not necessary to do this forever. You'll find that you will eliminate them one by one as soon as we quit paying attention to the shadow that delineates the tree, and our attention is on the tree. Doesn't get rid of the shadow, but we sure don't worry about it, and our concern is no longer with it, and we're not down there groveling and trying to weigh and measure the shadow anymore. Our attention is on the tree. And I assure you that the shadows of the tangible experience, the negatives, that which delineate positives, the two of which have a transcendent that being them, that the shadows are powerful, and that every shadow leads straight away to the tree. Thank you, absence, for making presence known. Thank you all for have I sounded something? I've given you something here that's so practical that it is applicable the minute you walk out the door. So you don't like the wife's dress she's wearing. You don't have to say anything anymore. You'll see how applicable this is and how practical. And all I'm saying, don't take my word for it. Put it to the test. Put it to the test. There are those here that have already done it. Okay, I will now just answer questions. Please ask me questions. Anybody wants to go, but the questions. Anybody have a specific question? Yes, sir.
You're emphasizing to me the fact that we're looking at the shadows, and because we're looking at the shadows, we're not seeing the light, so we'll look at the shadows as a delineation of the light that we should be seeing. And yet, then you said after that, the shadow and the tree both have that transcendent common reality. Couldn't we, I don't know why I'm asking this, but couldn't we also say, look at a living animal and say, thank you, living animal, for showing me death. Thank you, friendship, for showing me death. Is that also a valid?
It's a good question. It's a good question. Joy has a way of defining itself, and as I was reading Dr. DeLong's statement, that godliness can only be understood by godliness, or the Christ truth can't be explained, but it can be acknowledged. And in the acknowledgement of it, the explanation follows. What I have just told you is so immediately applicable and practical. All I can do is say that if you adopt this position, but know why and how and the basis for it, you'll find out that there is basis for the reason of the statement that there were tares sown among the wheat, and that the tares appear to be at odds with or in enmity against it. But the statement is also to leave the tares alone, and in the day of harvest the tares will be burned and the rest of it will be utilized. And I think that when you put this to the test, since it's so immediately applicable, try putting it to the test in reverse, and you'll see that there is no efficaciousness of it. You're just back in a word game thing. Yes, you can do whatever you like, but I would move in the direction of singleness, in the direction of joy, that is life, not in the direction of what appears to be that which delineates life. I would move towards honesty and not in a direction of that which delineates it. But I can say that you'll answer this for yourself in the living. Have I answered your question? It's true that you can know more about death, but what is death? To me, I have lived death closely. I have done what appears to be destroy living images. Not in one war, but two. I've lived closely. I know now what I did then. Okay, go ahead.
I guess what I'm saying that is because like they're trying to reach a point of not even seeing a good and bad, you know.
Good point. All right. One, that's a good question. One wants to see. This is a common proclivity. One wants to see, not want to see the negatives.
Or the positive.
All right, but to see that which transcends and lies beyond the appearance of okay. First, for myself, I've come to understand that tangibility is the means by which intangibility is made plain. That matter is spirit delineated. That what all this tangible seen, everything about it, is heaven made plain, the delineation of spirit. Therefore, what I used to call matter, I can now call spirit, its new name, provided I know what I'm saying and am living what I'm saying. Now, there was a time when I said, no, I don't ever want to even see any murder, rape, or anything else. I want to see none of the shadows. Well, I don't. But I understand what is before my eyes. And I can only reiterate, since I'm stuck with words, I can say that once the tree is discovered, in whatever the area of dualism is, once the tree is found, now bear in mind the tree is more than, this is more than a dualism, because the tree is living in addition. The shadow is without life, even though it does all the moving across the ground and all the contending, and being born every morning and it dies every afternoon. All right. But once the tree is found, in whatever area the dualism resides, one's attention is fixed there. And then if we do, in retrospect, or looking over the shoulder, or having others come to us with others of ourselves, with similar problems, we find we're able to use that knowledge in an articulation that is helpful there. I might point out that what transcends a dualism, let me give you an example. I can do it here very quickly. Here's an example of a dualism. We think of past and future. All right, there's no question but what an archaeologist can bring in here many evidences of the thing called past. And anybody in the room can dream of schedules and dinner dates and everything. But, all right, the past and the future. But we have come to discern, hopefully even in these talks, that the only time we can really consider the past or the future is in a now moment. Well, now, the now moment is while past and future are opposite ends of a dualism. A now moment, which would appear linearly to reside right in the middle, but actually transcends it, like as above, is being all there is to the appearance of past and future. Nowness is being all there is to any concept of past and future. But how does nowness, how does it transcend past? or future? Well, very simply, nowness includes the time we can touch the world, smell its fragrance. Nowness includes tangibility within this analogy, whereas past doesn't. It's brought forward into the now, nor does future. So therefore, we can understand quickly that nowness is a transcending concept. Well, every dualism that one can think of, male-female, for example, or light-darkness, there are those transcending essences that go beyond it. But I don't have time. We don't have time to go into all of that. But I hope I've answered your question in part, if not in full.
Well, I think that what we're doing is we're kind of using a mental method of looking at in other words, we wouldn't have to look at a dead animal and say, thank you for showing me light. If in the first place we weren't aware of the light. We're saying that we're reminding ourselves, refocusing.
I have given you a practical something to do that I think you can put to the test quickly. And may I say this about, there is a tendency for any information that is heart knowledge or heartfelt, for the intellect of us to come along and want to understand it precisely, and want to understand. Want it to all be laid out, and that is to be scientific. And science means the orderly presentation of wisdom. All right? Now, the reason and logic of us listen to the things that the heart first hears and responds to, and then the reason and logic of us, or the intellect of us, wants it to all fit together and make sense. But let me just ask you this, in a manner that, let's say, the Taoist with whom I lived for such a long time would do it. He would say, or I say, I don't remember him saying it, but I'll say it. How can would infinity be infinite if it is limited to being reasonable and logical? So, infinity can't be limited to reason and logic. That is, to a scientific explanation of everything. And this is why it has been said by the mystics that the intellect of us is a little lower than the angels. It's less than the heart of it. All right. For myself, I stopped trying to get everything to make reasonable and logical sense, because I found out that in so doing, I was limiting infinity. I can't limit illimitability to either limitability or illimitability. It's both. It sounds Zen-like, but it's even reasonable and logical. All right. Therefore, we are certain and with infinite wisdom to ultimately run into something that is outside the limits of reason and logic. And isness, the ineffable is certainly outside that. It cannot be bound to reason and logic. And in years past, this was one of the reasons why in the world would we name a philosophy that is so wonderful and so beautiful? Why would we give it such a limiting title as science? When science is simply the orderly presentation of wisdom. When, my goodness, anybody, especially the child of us, can look out and can see the randomness of beauty too. Flowers growing randomly in the field, not lined up in a scientific way. However, to show you how both are present, randomness within science, or within order and precision, and order and precision within randomness. We can see that there is no scientific scattering of the seed when the wind blows. It just, the seed scatters. Oh, I suppose somebody will someday with computers get even that down to a science. But as we move closer to the flowers growing randomly in the field, and we get down and we look with first a magnifying glass, we begin to see beauty and precision within the randomness. We can get still closer with an electron microscope, and there is a precision that is mind-blowing. And then finally we get all the way down to the subatomic particles, and there again is a randomness that is totally incalculable at the moment to the particle physicists. And then again there's a new order of balance, an electrical balance. So we have randomness within order and order within randomness. And yet infinity cannot be limited to just one or the other. Now, our tendency, I'm making a long answer, but it's good that we all hear that. Our tendency is to, we hear things like this, and the heart says, ah, yes, great, but within a few days comes the old nature of it, the old think of it, that wants everything to be reasonable and logical, which is the veritable substructure of humanhood and its society. It's got to be reasonable, it's got to be logical, it's got to make sense. It's got to be constructive or destructive. It has to serve a purpose or something. And we then start challenging the thing that a few days earlier the heart had accepted without question. Why can't we have both? You know, this was the perennial argument originally with philosophy. There was the argument of free will and determinism. Well, now, a few philosophers, and we're all philosophers, but a few such as this one that has written to the schools of philosophy in order to do whatever this philosopher is supposed to do. Why can't they both exist side by side? And it has yet to be refuted. Yes, both exist. Determinism is a matter of an already isness. The Father of lights with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. That. And free will has altogether to do with the intellect and the movement of a body in tangibility. And the two exist one within the other. And yet there is an ineffable being at all. Thank you. Let's go on to any other question. Yes, sir.
Would you care to comment on treatment and treating? Not so much from the standpoint of student, practitioner, or like that, but treat and treating, whatever.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good question. All of us, of course, are goaded by what appear to be our trials and tribulations to look for a solution. Well, at first it seems, looking across the scene at what's going on in the world, you'll see that most of it is mental manipulation. Most of it is the placebo effect and the trust or faith that one puts in somebody else's ability to do something. And or in some cases it can be genuine manipulation of one sort or another, like you can mind-bending exercises, or like hypnosis or whatever that would appear within the tangible arena to influence another. But for myself, that's the only thing I can answer. For me, it's a matter of knowing what's before my eyes and seeing guiltlessness. Not guilty, and knowing why. And what I can say that the results are sometimes instantaneous. And the results are in that arena of healing the results are amazing. But again, I do not longer limit infinity to disclosing what a human sense of myself thinks should appear or happen. Oh, how ridiculous to limit wealth to dollar when it can come in a million ways. So if I've answered your question, when I hear a sad tale on the phone, I can when I sit down to write these things to myself. And the words correspond with when I have made the outside as the inside, and the inside as the outside into a single one, so that guiltlessness is plainly apparent on the page. That's it. I hear the joyful noise. Rachel has had a chance to really see some woo-loos as far as that. What does that mean? Have I answered that? Please don't get sidetracked with healing. In Western metaphysics, healing is it's primarily a psychic thing that is going on. I don't mean anything disparaging. There's nothing wrong with turning to someone to help you when you can't work out your own problem. Maybe this will be helpful too. There was a time in my affairs when, after listening to such people as with this kind of a message, and they would say, listen, work out your own salvation. There's a time that you do it yourself. Okay, I threw away my books. I threw away every association with any church or teacher or anything, and I said, I got to do my own thing. If I don't do it, but what is that now in the light of what we've said today? That's like, I didn't realize that the book on the shelf called Lao Tzu or Mrs. Eddy or Joel or Lily in the Waters or Margaret Laird, I didn't realize that was myself. Why cut off all my tangible selfhood? Tangibility is healing, as intangibility is healing, because they are both one ineffable God presence. So, where once I said I got to work out my own salvation, then I went full circle again, and I began to see, well, gee whiz, if I can't answer a question about the chrysalis of a butterfly, I'll go to a book that tells me all about it. If I can go, here's a teacher that seems to know a great deal about, let's say, healing. I don't hesitate for 1 minute to turn to that aspect of myself and say, all right, now, listen, Bill here, and so forth. So, have I answered your question?
I was talking about free will, asserting free will, not self-will, but free will, to, like cause, not cause and effect, but cause as effect. For brevity's sake, to produce the desired result. But I know better than that. You know what?
Yes, sir.
Am I saying what I
Yes, sir. You're exactly right. It's all right. It's all right to understand, after all, the out picture.
And for oneself, one's own work, not the practitioner. I went for years of that. I don't do that anymore.
The most efficacious thing that one can do for oneself is to begin to write the truth as best one can to oneself, as thoughts occur, as ideas occur, and commence the little habit of keeping a personal journal. Because now, for all you young people that are very much interested in disciplines, I used to, when people would come to visit me in Mountain Brook, and here come all of these little disclosures but when people would come, one of the things that no one ever left without was something that tangible to do. And I talked about writing as that tangibility, as that tangible thing to do. And I have seen those people go on to publish books. As I say, do all kinds of things. They're lecturing and whatnot. It all seemed to commence with that thing of writing. But now let me tell you what happens when one writes the truth as best one can. Now granted, words are finite. But this is, you're writing to yourself, and we would do the best we can. But now here is what is really happening when you write. It's remarkable. And incidentally, there will be books about this. Every time I've ever made a talk in California, all that I've had to say is soon wound up in somebody else's book somewhere. And which is grand. Why not? Why not? What's wrong with that? So this will too, and I'm sure. But when you write, now we've all heard much about meditation and the efficaciousness of meditation. Well, first of all, we all know the efficacy of prayer. Not the beseeching, importuning prayer like, dear God, please make my cancer go away. Or please take care of my aches and pains and help me clear my head because, or whatever. Not that. Prayer as, let's say, the absolutist would define, which is a declaration of that which is. That kind of prayer. As Mrs. Eddy would state, a declaration of that which is, or as so many have said. this prayer, then, a declaration of isness in whatever words we can. All right? Now, when you write that, when you start writing it, you just pick up a paper and say, all right, I'm going to write about beauty because that is a quality of God, an attribute of God, so I'll write that. What I read a little while ago about the dog bounding, what I did in front of a typewriter. All right. Now, when one is writing and making a declaration of what one is, you're praying. You're praying, but you're having fun doing it because you're writing. It's not any bending your knee bit. It's not any piousness. It's not pinching your nose. And it's just, you're making a declaration on a piece of paper, and there it is. You're praying. But let me tell you what else you're doing. These people who have, and so many hundreds over the years have come to me to say, I've meditated. I mean nothing disparaging about this now, but about, say, Joel's work. Because Joel and I studied. And his meditation, and he speaks of a little click and whatnot. Well, I've had so many people say, I've been trying this with all my might. This has gone on for years. And it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened. Not the way he said, and not what I've been led to believe. It just hasn't happened. I've been meditating and meditating. Well, when you write a declaration of what is, whatever, beauty, life, love, joy, peace, but not from the bottom-up position, but write as deity. As it comes to you that deity would make a declaration in words about it. Now you're praying, but you're meditating. Because what is meditation essentially? But a blanking of old things, the human mind. Letting go the human sense of self. Now if you're doing it top down, the old bottom-upping, the poor me that's stupid with aches and pains is not within conscious awareness. Not if you're writing light through the wings of a butterfly. Well, okay, that's all. It doesn't have to be a religious thing, a metaphysical thing, simple thing. All right, you're meditating and praying simultaneously. All right, another one of the grand disciplines of the world that we know to be tremendously potent is contemplation. In the East, in Japan, and there, where one blanks out old think or mortal thought by viewing the beauty of a flower, by sitting quietly and looking at a garden, by watching the leaves fall, the observation of a thing. That is another meditation that's most potent work. But when you're writing, you're contemplating. Because a word, whatever word you write on that paper, is a thing. A word is a tangible, finite thing. It's not infinite. It's eternal, but it's not infinite. The word. Okay, so you are praying, you're meditating, and you're contemplating, all in one action. And let me tell you, that's only, I've only scratched the surface. All of the other things, to enter the Shekinah. Where are words? Within. Have you heard the statement, how beautiful upon the mountaintop are the feet of him who bringeth glad tidings and publisheth peace? The Hasidic concept of Judaism, a most potent and powerful and efficacious procedure. Do you realize that when you write, whatever you're writing, that you are publishing it? You are making the outside as the inside, but you're doing it. You're not theorizing about it. You're not speculating about it. You're not wondering if you're doing it right. You're not having to go down here and get a special sound and sit cross-legged and go, You're doing it. Down there on a piece of paper. You're meditating, contemplating, you're praying. You have entered into the secret place of the Most High. Because you're sure not thinking about the world. You're not thinking about the aches and pains or what's for dinner. And you have entered the Shekinah. All of those in one simple exercise. And that's only the beginning. Furthermore, when it's all over with, it's there. Tangibility has begun. The move, after all, this tangible scene is very much of our own making. Look at the shoes you're wearing and everything. It was published in one way, and the tangible scene was changed. You said to somebody, I want those shoes. I want this shirt. And the tangible scene suddenly includes it. So the outside becomes the inside very much as a consequence of our publishing, what comes out of our mouth, or what's written on a piece of paper. But when you write from top down, what's going down on that piece of paper are whatsoever things are good and true and perfect. Think on these things. That's only the beginning of the advantages of writing. And I can tell you that it becomes not just when you're doing it, pretty soon you'll see that you think about it for a long time before you do it. Pretty soon you'll do as this does. I'm forever, that's it. I'm forever doing it. There's hardly a time when I stop, and I can't ask anybody to believe it, except that that's the way it is. I think Rachel can verify it. And so therefore, this thing that used to seem so ridiculous to me, to pray without ceasing. Why, my God, it's almost impossible to not pray if you'll do that. Do it. And not theorize about it and speculate about it. But I've quit talking about it publicly like this. You know why? Because it becomes a crutch. It'll just be another spiritual exercise on the scene if it is not a practice that's top down. Unless you sit and write as deity would write. Now this sounds ridiculous. You know, but you sit there, you can ask the question. It'll be Bill, what is your...
Scott.
Scott, thank you. I got a little next door neighbor, Scott. Scott can ask the question. Because Scott, the concept of Scott, the identity, the ego Scott that would say, you know, I don't know. Let him ask the question. That is the shadow that is making the genuine identity plain, all right? Scott asked the question, all right, you sit there and then put your feet flat on the floor, you take the pencil and say, all right, now how would God answer that question? How would infinite perfection answer that question? How would deity reply to that? Would he even recognize it, or what? Or whatever comes to you. Now, then write whatever comes. You might write Mary Had a Little Lamb. It doesn't make any difference. But do you realize? Now just stop and think and listen gently for a minute. Oh, sweet people, I don't know why I'm saying all this, but it's got to be for good reason. Please don't take advantage of me. And please understand. But listen, when you sit there and say, all right, now I shall write as God writes. Do you know what you're really doing? And maybe for the first time in your life. Because I remember when it first dawned on me. That during the time that I was writing the answer, however it came, I at least, for that brief moment, had taken God identity to be who and what I am. And Bill identity was off somewhere else, waiting for the answer. All right? So it is a practice then in taking the Christ identity, to be it. And when you're writing as it, you're being it. And it does wonderful things. Can I tell you that once upon a time in my life I was inarticulate. That is, I couldn't talk to people. God, the way the words are coming out here now. I could not stand up in front of a group of people. The people when I was in school learned not to call on me. They learned not to, because I would stand up and I would wet the floor right in front of God and everybody. And I became an officer in the Army before I even got to where I could a little bit talk to people. But when I began this, that I tell you, with it, came a muse. Not the muse, the divine presence, it's being awareness that wrote the word. Now, I tell you that when you start this, you know, it'll seem like you're just writing a dialogue, or that you're just playing a game, or that it's just something to do. But so many things begin to happen. First of all, you find yourself refreshed, and you find little answers coming, and you find that sense of joy I was telling you about sometime. But it won't be long until you'll find something on a page that you picked up that you wrote the day before, the morning before, the week before, and you'll say, who wrote that? Because it'll be infinitely more beautiful than anything Scott could write, or Bill could write, or Shakespeare could write. It'll be clear and precise, and it'll be honest. And it will be without motive, without trying to do anything to anybody for any reason, but to make a declaration of the truth, for and as oneself. Okay, that's the most efficacious thing for healing that could ever be done. And I do it whenever I say to some part of myself that I say I'll help. That's what I do. And sometimes I mail it, and most often I don't. But the response is always the same. A joyful. Have I answered your question? Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
One is, I completely agree with you on writing. I have had the occasion to go back over the notes that I had written 15 years ago and find that every single statement that got the awareness changes every one of them.
You and I were together 10 years ago. Was I talking about writing then?
Yes, yes.
And you put it to the test.
Yes, you were.
All right, thank you. That's just a good confirmation. Thank you.
It's absolutely true, and I try to tell people when they in discussion, they really don't even know too much about metaphysics, and they're torn between the orthodox concepts and the metaphysical concepts and the mystical. And I just simply say, let's sit down and write out your pain in the sense of simply writing what you want to feel like, which is, I mean, this is the way I have to put it to them sometimes. And it works naturally.
It sure does.
Where all of the theory, all of the treatment, all the rest is supposed to fulfill it. But that does. Now, another thing I'd like to ask you, I'd like to hear what you would have to share with us as to this born again movement that's going on, that, and I don't say that's very the charismatic movement.
Yeah.
And the tremendous results they seem to be getting in answered prayer and in healing.
Yes, that's a very good question. I'm not certain that I can give a very thorough answer. But I would like to say that just very recently, and this is not to put it down at all. And please, I don't put it down. To start with, every religious philosophy, every concept, when viewed from the standpoint, if we begin with awareness, the divine awareness of being, all of these concepts have their place within awareness. That is, they're like flowers in a garden. And some of them would seem to be like briars and stigers within a garden. Some like poison ivy within the garden. That is, we have the sour delineating the sweet, and we have the and so forth. You see? But all are concepts. I have no quarrel with any. I couldn't possibly, without criticizing and condemning myself, any statement that I made that was a genuine belittling of a concept or an idea would be a belittling of the very awareness that perceives it. So now that we understand that, the charismatic movement and some of the very enthusiastic movements that are going on at the moment have their place and are doing their thing. I think that a great deal can be explained as to the efficaciousness or what appears to be the results that come from that might be explained better by the new psychology than by me at the minute. But I can echo some of the words that the new psychology has to say about that. Dr. Oh gosh. I know him too, Dr. Cousins, Norman Cousins of the Saturday Review, and now he published an article, I believe, in Harper's recently, called The Mysterious Placebo, How Mind Helps Medicine Work. Now, it's a most interesting article. It points out that the sugar pill, or the placebo, is, I think, 63% as effective as, say, the drug in doing whatever it's supposed to do. Now, it makes no difference what it's doing. Some of them are way more effective than that, but it averages out 63%. For example, let's say it's a pain. Somebody has tremendous pain, and the placebo, the sugar pill, that is given that one, and that one believing with all his heart that it's going to work, and with grand trust and faith in the doctor and the science of medicine or the science of whatever that is involved. That in the case of pain, the pain pill, sometimes it is twice as effective as the legitimate pain, like heroin or whatever. All right. So now Dr. Cousin wrote this very remarkable article about the efficaciousness of the placebo, but now he ends it in a most remarkable way of quoting Dr. Albert Schweitzer. And since he quotes him directly, and because I know Dr. P a little bit, Dr. Cousin a little bit,